I am not saying let's abandon science. It's dumb, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it is still an integral component of what we need as ecological advocates, but it's almost as if in many circumstances, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter if there is a consensus on peer-reviewed science on certain topics, because what ends up being dominant is the story and the status of the storyteller. Welcome, Wild Ones. This is Josh Schlossberg, host of the Green Root Podcast, the official podcast of Eco Integrity Alliance, where we're on a quest to uncover the roots of the ecological crisis. Another solo episode as we do every other week. I don't have anything brilliant to communicate this week as opposed to other weeks, but I do have a topic I would like to suss out with you. So think of this not as a completed conclusion, but something I've been kicking around, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. I do think this is relevant and important enough to discuss, so this isn't just me simply brainstorming, although it is also that. So here's how I'm framing it. Science versus story plus status. So I'm doing a math equation. Why would I be doing that? That's not what math is. So what I'm doing is this. At Eco Integrity Alliance, we focus on evidence based in science. So peer-reviewed studies, all science is people testing a thing multiple times with a sort of framework and then seeing what makes sense. So they ask a question, is this going to happen? If I drink this, will I become, superhuman? Not this time. Let's try it again another time. Somebody else will drink that and see what happens. That's all science is. It's not sacrosanct. It's an evolving process. A lot of times it's wrong. A lot of times you can prove whatever you want to, depending on how you manipulate things. But I would argue it is one of the best tools we have in terms of understanding ecosystems, wildlands, wildlife, impacts on that, all that stuff. There are different ways of knowing things. Many of us have intuition. There are cultures that have made sense of things in ways for millennia. All that should be incorporated into the decision-making process and the sense-making process. But I think personally that science is pretty important. And so pretty much everything that I will say in terms of this is ecologically valuable because of this, this is ecologically harmful because of this, is based on peer-reviewed science. Recently, I am starting to wonder if that is enough. So I do want to make it very clear. I am not saying let's abandon science. It's dumb, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it is still an integral component of what we need as ecological advocates, wildland and wildlife advocates, whatever you want to call yourself, conservationists, environmentalists, tree huggers, bog lovers, whatever you want to call yourself. Science is pretty important, but it's almost as if in many circumstances, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter if there is a consensus on peer-reviewed science on certain topics, because what ends up being dominant is the story and the status of the storyteller. So I'm going to give a specific example. And of course, yes, I'm talking about cutting down forests. Josh, why are you so obsessed with forests? Well, because we came from the trees. I, for one, was an ape, still am to a certain degree, and we came from the trees. So that is my main focus, but public lands is what Eco Integrity Alliance works on. Of course, it goes beyond public lands. Just because there's a private industry forest does not mean they should be clear cutting it and spraying it with toxic herbicides, etc. But yes, that is my focus on forests. And so I'm going to be speaking through that lens, but this can be extrapolated elsewhere. But I want to give you specific examples based on stuff that I actually know. So here's what has upset me. And I talked about this in the previous episode 2 weeks ago called Beetle Mania, where I'm talking about how there is the latest natural wave of the native mountain pine beetle. It's a pine beetle that is native to Colorado and the West. And of course, they're saying all these things that they said years ago that were disproven by science and just looking with your eye holes, which is what is disproven was the idea that all its trees are going to die. Lots of trees die. Some trees die. That's important. That's important for structure. We need those to die. But their main concern is wildfire. Oh, guess what? The studies found that the beetle kill did not increase risk of wildfire nor severity. Some individual trees within a 1 to 3 year period, as the needles die, might be more likely to catch fire, but that's not forest-wide. That's not increased severity, and that's a pretty quick thing, and it's kind of a wave across the forest. It's this tree, this tree, this tree. Anyway, so the science turns out to be consensus on that issue. And again, I don't want to go through all of the details because I talked about that ad nauseum in that Beatlemania episode. So go ahead and listen to that. Pause this if you want and listen to that because I'm not going to go into the details. But these are the facts. The consensus science is that beetle kill is unrelated to wildfire concerns. So that means anyone saying they need to log forests because of beetle kill is ignorant or lying to you. There's no in between. So what is my point here? Good question, Josh, he asks of himself. My point is this. I did not even imagine that after all of this science was put out here in Colorado and across the West on beetles, that the agencies and members of the clear-cut cult would completely pretend that science doesn't exist. Number one, I wouldn't have thought they would have had the guts to do that. Number two, I wouldn't have thought it would be just parroted across pretty much all media outlets as if it's complete fact without even just a 10-second just search to find, wait a second here. And that basically these agencies, media, even some who claim that they're conservationists are just running with this as if what they're saying has any validity whatsoever. Now, there are certain areas in which you can debate the science. It can be controversial. But on this issue, it ain't. And yet it doesn't matter. So we have these scientists who devote their lives to putting out this information. Nobody cares. It's not even being paid attention to. And here's the bad part. These agencies know about the science. So maybe they could have pretended 10 years ago, well, we don't know, or they ignored the evidence that they didn't have compiled as well. Now we know. And they're going like this. So this is why there is this beetle task force here in Colorado, and it is stacked with 100% proponents, advocates of logging, and the ones who are carrying out the logging. The one update on this, again, not to bore you with the details from Beatlemania episode 113, but some of us in the ecosystem advocacy community met with the Department of Natural Resources Extraction, and we said, hey, here's the science. They're like, oh, very interesting. And then we're like, we would like it for you to bring actual independent scientists maybe onto your task force and a couple conservationists, because you actually have the timber industry making, as voting members here. They're like, no, we're not going to add any of those members. And that was pretty surprising. We said, well, we think you should do that. And at the very least, add on these non-voting members. They already have this panel of non-voting members. It's sort of advisory capacity. You could add to that. No, we're actually not going to do that. So they are just stonewalling. They're just like, the science doesn't exist. We will only have the clear-cut cult deciding whether we're going to log based on the science that we're ignoring, because the Department of Natural Resources Extraction has already put out stuff before they formed the task force that it's connected to wildfire and that they need to be doing logging. So we're trying to set up a meeting with the governor to engage and say, you need to, if you want to pretend that your task force has any validity, you need to add other members. If they don't, guess what? It's not valid at all. Nothing they say is valid. 0% of what they have to say is valid if every single member of it has a conflict of interest and there's no independent scientists and no actual conservationists. But that aside, the bigger issue is even in situations where we have piles of the science, where there's not even really an argument against it, it's still being pushed through. And that is the power of disinformation and propaganda. It is mostly because of media at this point. We have outlets here in Colorado called the Colorado Sun, which some of us call Colorado Pravda, which their editors and their reporters have admitted in their private newsletter to subscribers that they believe whatever the agencies have to say, and they've called anyone who critiques any of it extreme. They've put out straight up disinformation. They've fabricated quotes. So those folks have this vested agenda for whatever reason, their corporate funding, their just ideology. They've dug a hole for themselves. So they'll just parrot anything these agencies will say devoid of fact. I will say that we were able to get Colorado Public Radio to do a story on this that was very heavy on the agency perspective, but they did interview a leading scientist who we connected with them. So it's so sad we're at the point where it's like there's a media story that does like the most basic journalism 101 of getting various perspectives, and I have to announce it on my podcast as this amazing event. That's how bad things are. But anyway, the point around this is the science doesn't seem to carry the day. What does is story and status. So story is narrative. So the clear-cut cult has this pretty absurd but effective narrative. It's fiction. See that book, Charwood? It's a book I wrote. It's an eco-folk horror. That is fiction. So that's when you tell a story that's not real for entertainment. It belongs in a novel, and you can buy it if you want to. But where it doesn't belong is in government agency press releases, in legislation, in media that's pretending to be legitimate. It doesn't belong there at all. But the narrative that the agencies, industry, media, the clear-cut cult has is natural disturbance is bad. So wildfire and beetles are bad. The way to make things good to protect your lives and to protect the forest is to cut down that forest, and we'll be able to provide wood products, and in some cases what they pretend to be renewable energy in the form of one of the most polluting energy sources, which is called biomass energy, which is just incinerating forests for energy. So they have this story that's effective because people want a simple fix. People are afraid of nature. So fire, bugs, dead trees, they hate that. They don't even like denser forests. A lot of people want sun through it. They want to be able to picnic out there and play frisbee, I guess. And so it fits into their prejudices. So that story really, really latches on with people. They whip up this hysteria and this fear of wildfire or whatever. And then they're like, don't worry, we have a perfect way of fixing this. It's by destroying the forest. And facts are, not only does that not protect communities, it can increase the spread of fire. And so but the story is so powerful that even if and when homes and communities burn from the logging, the story is, yeah, the hippies wouldn't let us log enough. That's what happened. So they have they have pretty much a fictional answer for everything. And why else is story so effective? The narrative is very powerful, no question. It fits into people's prejudices. It's what they want to hear, an easy fix, right? We're lazy. We're just like, oh, well, that's all we have to do. I don't have to do home hardening. I don't have to actually do things to protect my home or put effort into it. They just logged in the forest and we're good. That's what we, unfortunately, as humans want to hear. Our evolution is to do the least energy possible to survive. But what makes the story so powerful and more powerful than the science is status. So the entities who propagate this. So when elected officials say it, that's status. When working lands extraction groups like the Nature Conservancy with a $1.8 billion annual budget say it, that's status. When media outlets say it, oh, I know the name of that media outlet. They ran an article I liked on a car accident, so they must be legitimate. That's all status. And unfortunately, what we have the science, we need to work on our story, and we need to try to get more status. I do not have status. I have zero status, okay? What has status are environmental groups that have bigger names. So we're trying to actively court some conservation groups that are not actively promoting extraction, but are kind of on the sidelines or have been engaged behind the scenes doing important things like signing on to letters and things like that to come out a little more public. We need their status to engage in this so we can have a chance of impacting the narrative. There was Dr. James Hansen, the world-renowned climate scientist, who came out against the Orwellian Fix Our Forests Act and critiqued wildfire pretense logging. That was an instance of status. That was very powerful, and we need more of that. Do we need celebrities? I don't know how helpful celebrities are, but sure, if you're a celebrity watching this, by all means, we would love your voice to be a part of this, and celebrities have in the past been a part of that. We do have the folk singer Carole King. She's been really engaged on the issue of forest protection. So her audience is vast, and she has been very valuable. So I changed my mind. We do need celebrities. So please help us in that regard. We need the larger environmental groups. We need people just who have name recognition in their communities. I work with a lot of people who are like, they forward me stuff. They're like, here, Josh, go get him. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Submit my 98th opinion piece that now all these media outlets are refusing to run? And that's actually the difficult thing is we do have some folks with status here, but our media outlets are intentionally, they're refusing to run opinion pieces. We had our state's leading wildfire scientist submit to media outlets, and they refuse to run their pieces. And can you guess which one? Yeah, Colorado Sun. Yeah, they won't run pieces that critique logging in any way, but they will run from those with status who are doing logging. So that's where we're at. That's basically all I wanted to say about this. I guess the last piece is working on our story. As we try to get more folks with status, how can we work on our story? And I think the story, yes, needs to be pushing back, continuing to push back against land mismanagement agency extraction, industry destruction, media disinformation, you name it. But I think we have to have a positive story as well. And that is why more and more Eco Integrity Alliance is moving towards this greater vision. So a vision of, you can frame it lots of different ways, but one way is biodiversity, climate, and wildlife or watershed refugia. So that's what public lands should be. So we're not just fighting against the destruction. We are actively promoting this designation of refugia for public lands. And that, again, can be framed lots of different ways. But it also ties into something bigger. Why should the U.S. do this? Well, for obvious reasons. These are our last best ecosystems, all the reasons stated: wildlife, climate, watersheds, recreation. You can put whatever you want into that. But the bigger framework is that there's something called the Global Biodiversity Framework. And this would call for a 30% of terrestrial and I believe aquatic ecosystems to be genuinely protected by 2030. Now, the Biden administration had their own 30 by 30. It was really watered down and weak, and it didn't even get through. So leave that one aside. Don't let that spoil that concept for you. But that's just a stepping stone, because the larger vision was articulated by E.O. Wilson, sociobiologist who passed away not that long ago. And his is called the half Earth. So half Earth is the idea that half of the world's ecosystems are set aside as genuinely protected. Oh, cool. We can log them also? No, you can't. Okay. Well, as long as we can graze them, you can't do ranching on these lands. We can drill and mine them. No, I have to explain. You can't do any of those things on those lands and call them protected. That is not what protection looks like. If you want to have working lands, great. Do that on the other 50%, not that 50%. So what if that's the story we're telling? And I think that positive story can really get a lot of people on board. Some people are drawn to negative. A lot of people really just shut down and shy away. They don't have that kind of personality. Lunatics like me who kind of rush towards the fire, whatever genetic defect I have. But we do need to do the fighting. We do need to have goalies, but we have to go on the offense, and we have to have that better story. And I think that's a pretty damn good story. What do you think? So tell me what you think about all of the above. Do you think science is no longer the main tool we can use to communicate our ecological perspective? Do you feel that story needs to be more prominent, or do we at least have to augment that sound science with better storytelling and status? Do we need musicians and filmmakers and other people who maybe they're not experts on these topics, but if they care about it, they have platforms? Do you know any of those people? So any of the above, I want to see your comments. Don't call me names. Avoid personal attacks, please. But focus on the points that were made, any agreement, disagreement, edits, etc. I genuinely would like to hear from you.